Man, making videos are fun. Welcome to Archetype Gaming. I'm the Archmaster. All right, this is video 2. Talked about a little sneak peek into the classes of my my game, the game that I have made. That's still in playtest, still in the works. It's not fully done at all by any means, but I'm working on it. And yeah, it's a total replacement for 5e. And today we're talking about the classes. I have 12 all completely new classes that are still close enough to 5e classes that you can like transfer your character over and fit somewhere, right? But it's all new. So anyway, today we're getting to the warrior archetype. So last time I explained that there are 4 archetypes in fantasy, 4 archetypes in like the human mind, actually. The explorer, the warrior, the king, and the mage. So last time we talked about explorer archetype classes, the skirmisher, skulk, and wayfinder. And those are more interesting than just like the rogue and the ranger, which is pretty much all you get for exploration stuff in 5e. Anyway, today we're talking about the warrior archetype. I split up the fighter and actually made him interesting. I also got rid of the paladin because the paladin itself isn't a full class. It's a combination of a couple of things. So I'll explain that. So anyway, I have 3 classes for the warrior archetype. Number 1, we have the armiger. It took me forever to find that name. And armiger is, like the actual meaning of the word is essentially someone who like bears a banner or bears your coat of arms when you're going into battle. That's called an armiger. I took the name because it's better than any other name I could find, right? So the armiger is a medium armor fighter. You get proficiency in medium armor and simple and martial weapons, and you don't have heavy armor, right? Instead of saying, here's the one fighter and he does absolutely everything, no. If I narrow you down and restrict you and say, hey, you only get this one thing, then I, as the game designer, get to give you interesting features that use that one thing. If I say, hey, you can do anything, well, then I can't really give you interesting features to do everything, right? Like that's too overpowered. In order for me to actually give you something interesting and fun to play, I have to restrict you and say this one thing is fun to play, right? Anyway, that's a sneak peek into the game designer's mind. So the armiger is your medium armor fighter, right? With your martial weapons, you are all about damage. You are all about weapons, right? Yeah, you have a decent amount of armor. You can fight. You can survive a bit, but the armiger is about damage, right? Its 2 paths are the fighter path and the... I wrote this. I really should remember it straight up, shouldn't I? The fighter and... Darn it, I forget. I think it's called the Spellblade. Or the spell sword or something like that. We'll call it Spellblade for now, right? So you have your mundane armiger, your mundane medium armor fighter, warrior guy, and then your magical medium armor warrior, right? One is called the fighter, because like you're mundane, and that's all you do. You just fight. Your medium armor fighting, you just do damage. The other, you fix you mix your fighting, your battle problems with your weapon with magic, right? So you have your fighter and your Spellblade. So see, you're not really losing anything. I'm just like renaming it and like splitting it up a little so you can actually tell where you are, but you still keep all the same content as 5e. Essentially, I fixed some broken things. So yeah, your armiger, you're all about damage. So if you play that class, and especially if you play the fighter, then you are just all about absolutely going ham on enemies with your weapons, and you have battle maneuvers tied to your weapons, and it's a whole lot more interesting than Stick to 5e. I came up with this, I look at 5e, I'm like, okay, the actual weapon maneuvers tied to your weapons, and each weapon has a weapon maneuver, and they're actually cool. And so you can be the quintessential fighter who has 6 different weapons on him, and each one has a different battle maneuver. So you're like, oh, I need to trip this guy, I'll use that. Oh, I need to disarm him, I need to blind him, I gotta move that guy 10 feet back, and you keep switching between all your weapons and stuff. You're a weapon master. That's the whole point of being an armiger, of being a fighter, especially, is you get your weapon maneuvers at level 1 instead of at level 4 like everyone else. So like your thing is like special. You're all about weapons, right? It's really cool to play an armiger. I've had a player that played the armiger fighter, and so he was like no magic, all mundane. So the 2 subclasses under armiger fighter that has the 2 subclasses. It's tactician and cleaver. Cleaver is essentially it's not barbarian rage, but it's like fueled by blood. And so like the more you kill, the more damage you do and stuff. It's like it encourages you to go on a killing spree and just kill as much as you can. It's really fun. And then the tactician, I guess we're gonna go on a side tangent for a second. I think that when you're playing a game and you want to pick a class, you should be able to have any attribute high. Okay? I don't think you should be absolutely skewered into just playing one, like, oh, you're a fighter, you always have to have high strength, right? I do think that when you have a different attribute high, it should affect gameplay. I don't think that you should just say, oh, well, whichever attribute is your highest, you add that number to your attack roll and you're good, and we're not going to explain it, right? I think that breaks immersion, doesn't make any sense. I don't like that approach. I like saying, hey, if you want to be a fighter and you have a high strength, great, you'll do a lot of damage. Oh, you have a high constitution? Great, you can wear the best armor. Oh, you have high intelligence? Play the tactician. He actually uses his intelligence mod, like you make intelligence checks and whatnot to give yourself extra bonus or damage or a chance to hit, or like it gives your buddies chances to hit because you hit someone, you open them up, so now your buddy has a +3 to attack them, right? It should actually affect the gameplay, make it feel different. It shouldn't just be, oh yeah, you have a +5 to hit because one of your scores is the highest. Like, no, if you have a high intelligence and a low strength, that should feel different than having a high con and a high dex, right? In my system, you don't get extra attacks when you level up, you get extra attacks when you have a high dex. So if you're a fighter and you have a 15 dexterity score, you can attack twice. Because you're so dexterous, you can attack twice. If you have less than that, you can't, right? Anyone can have a 15 dexterity and attack twice. Because that's what dexterity does, right? If you have a 15 strength and a +2 mod, now you can wield two-handed weapons. You can't wield two-handed weapons unless you have a 15 strength, right? If you have, a 15 con, then there are a bunch of different benefits. I don't want to go into every single one of them, but you get extra benefits when your scores are higher, right? So you can play a fighter with a high strength, and it plays different than a fighter with a high intelligence or a high constitution or high charisma. Here's one thing. I'm going all over the place with this. Bear with me. In 5e, you have the whole flanking thing. I get rid of across the board flanking, and I say if you have a 15 charisma, then your allies can flank, right? Because you are such a force of personality. You capture their attention with your high charisma, and so now your buddies actually get advantage to attack them from behind because you are actually keeping their attention, right? Because normally, if someone is fighting a bunch of opponents, he can move around and hit people and back up, right? But if he's just focused on you, then your buddies actually get advantage on the attack, right? So like you can play a fighter with a high charisma and give all your buddies advantage to attack the enemies you're flanking, right? Like it actually helps you do your job. So anyway, I think they should actually play different when you have high scores. I don't think you should, well, if you don't have a high strength, you just can't play fighter. It's like, no, I totally think you should be able to play fighter. It should play differently though. You're not doing a bunch of damage with your own weapons. You have high intelligence, so you're making openings for your allies, or you have high charisma, so they're getting advantage, or you have high dexterity, so you just attack more and make up for it, or et cetera, et cetera. Man, thank you for getting through that. That must have been difficult. Okay, so next we're going to. I really should know my own classes. Next we're going to the brute. So I got rid of barbarian because technically the word barbarian just means someone who lives outside of civilization. And technically civilization just means cities. That's literally what the word civilized or civilization, if someone is civilized, it means they live in a city. That's all civilization means. So barbarians are people who don't live in cities, right? I think you should be able to have the fantasy of this rager guy who hits things, and you can be the king's bodyguard. You don't have to live outside of cities. I take barbarian, it's like, you can be a barbarian of any class. I can be a druid and I live outside of a city, so I'm a barbarian, because I'm not civilized. But I'm a druid, right? So I think barbarian is not a class. It's where you live, right? So I change it to brute, right? The no armored, raging brute, right? I just think that works better. I have a group of people in my world that live in a certain place, and they're called the Western Barbarians. But they're not all the 5e barbarian class, right? I had to change the name. It's like these are technically barbarians. So anyway, the brute, they are the no armor warrior class, right? Y'all know 5e, you know a lot about brutes, you have rage and all that, but I like to add a bit of flavor and a bit of something that's not just, well, I rolled an attack to hit, right? So with the armature, they have their fancy weapon maneuvers along with various class and subclass features that let them actually be, you know, tacticians or cleavers. They actually get to do special things on the battlefield. What the brute does, with every attack, they can move people. I like the idea of a brute taking his axe and wading into a horde of enemies and like knocks him 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet, and he's just moving people around. I really like that idea a lot, right? And of course they take extra damage when they fall, or they land prone, or you knock them to your enemy, then your enemy can hit them, or sorry, you knock them to your ally, then your ally can hit them because they're prone in front of it. Like, there are so many cool things you can do. Knock them against walls, off cliffs and ledges, etc., right? I like the idea of you pick a class and it actually plays different. It's not just, oh, I use two-handed weapons. It's like, I use two-handed weapons to knock people around, right? I think it should be more substantive, right? So you play the brute, you're knocking people around all the time. It's a lot of fun. I like it. Lastly, all right, so we've gone through the light armor warrior, you know, fighter. It's technically in the explorer archetype, but the light armor warrior guy is the skirmisher. The no armor warrior is the brute. The medium armor warrior is the armiger. Heavy armor warrior is the bulwark. A bulwark, in real life, it's like a big wall, right? I think I was playing Skyrim and there was a character called Argus the Bulwark. I was like, ooh, the Bulwark, that's cool. Like, they call him a bulwark because he's a wall. So I took it as a class. So the Bulwark is the heavy armor fighter, right? I take heavy armor away from the 5e fighter class, and I say, no, you are your own class. You specialize in heavy armor. Your class features, your skills, your abilities, everything about you revolves around you using heavy armor. They also get simple and martial weapons that they do damage, right? He's still in the warrior archetype, but he uses heavy armor. It's about standing in the breach between the enemies and his allies. It's about like not falling prone and blah blah blah, right? I actually give them features to let them tank, to let them pull attacks from the enemies onto themselves to make sure their allies don't get hit, right? They're an actual class that does that. There's an actual tanking class, right? So the armature is all about doing damage to him, the brute is about moving people, and the bulwark is about protection, either of himself or allies, right? He's the tank. He gathers the attention to himself. The bulwark has two paths, which, if I remember correctly, is the warder and the nope, that's the brute. The brute has the warder and the ravager. We're gonna keep going, and we're gonna look at the bulwark, and they have the bastion. And I forgot what my other one was. I really should know this better. I wrote it. It's been like a year since I actually worked on this. Maybe it's been 6 months. I don't know. Anyway, I probably lost a lot of people right there. The bulwark is the heavy armor warrior, right? I take the heavy armor and fighting nature of the fighter, I take it away, and I take the paladin and I strip away all the divine magic stuff, and I take that heavy armor archetype, I mash them. That's my bulwark, right? You are the heavy armor protector, defender, big guy, right? You can have like a subclass and whatnot that lets you have luminous, cleric, healing, slaying fiend type of magic. But you can have that with any class. Here's just lastly a thing that I change in my system over 5e is that in 5e it's they take ideas that are in the zeitgeist of people's mind, like the paladin, the heavy armor paladin, gleaming armor with their sword, and they take it and they put it in their game to great effect. It's very popular and simple. It's recognizable. People understand, oh yeah, it's a paladin. They know what it is, right? But it doesn't leave a lot of room for customizability. If you want customizability, you have to multi-class, which just breaks game balance in so many ways. And then you, instead of feeling like your own one thing, you feel like I'm part of 2 or 3 other things. Well, I have 2 levels in fighter, and I have 3 levels in druid, and I have 2 levels in paladin, right? So it's like I'm a druid fighter paladin, instead of being like, oh, I'm, sworn to protect nature through divine magic and warrior. It's like, you're not one thing. You're a little bit of 3 things, right? I don't like it. So what I do is, instead of saying like, hey, here's your pigeonhole thing, like you're a paladin, you have to have heavy armor, you have to have martial weapons, and you have to have divine magic, and that's all you are. It's like, no, I split up those individual things into their composite parts, right? So you can be a heavy armor warrior, right? And that's the class just gives you the heavy armor warrior with your weapons, right? You can say, hey, I also want to have divine magic, or arcane magic, or natural druidic magic, or I just want to double down on weapons, or maybe I want to serve some entity, right? I let you take all those things and add those on, so you can actually build your own character from all the individual composite parts exactly how you want, instead of choosing like a full thing. Well, here's a class, and I only wanted the heavy armor out of it, but I also got the divine magic. I got this baggage, right? There's no baggage. You just pick what you want out of each individual thing, and you build your own character that way, right? I'll get more into it later, but you have your race and your class and your subclass, right? Race and class, sub-race and subclass, right? But I also give you your devotion, which in my game I actually have rules for your worship. I don't really call it worship because that's not exactly what it is. You're an adventurer. You're using power from some entity or something, right? But I actually have rules and stuff for what entity you're in service of, whether it's considered a good benevolent entity or like an evil dark one from a far realm, right? Or if you're just like serving ideals and goodness and truth and whatnot, and then those things will give you those powers. If it's like a sacred oath, like I let you take your devotion, and it's a separate slot, like your class and your subclass and your devotion. It's actually a separate thing that you get to pick stuff for and progress as you go in the game, right? And so you can mix and match those and be like, oh yeah, I'm a wizard, an elven wizard, but my I still swear a sacred oath of, protection to the crown or something, right? You can take a paladin's oath at any class. Any class can take the oath, right? Because that's a separate slot. It's not part of your class. Your oath, that's part of your devotion. It's part of what you've actually chosen to do, right? And it gives you powers and all that kind of stuff the way your race or your class would. Then fourthly, I actually have 4 parts of it because, my whole game is, everything in my game is about 4, right? So that fourth one is adherence. It's your body, right? So if devotion is your soul, like where have you directed your soul? Oh, my soul is soaring an oath, or my soul is devoted to this entity or something, right? Your adherence is your body, right? So you can think of it like attunement, where you can take your body and you can attune it to an element, right? Or you can attune it to a creature or another person, right? You can take your body and just kind of attune it to certain things. I call it adherence. You adhere to that thing, right? And so if you become adherent to fire, then you can actually get like fire powers and whatnot, and you can get extra strength. Your strength score actually goes up, and you can hit harder and do more damage and like shoot fire at your hands. And the more adherence you have, the more you do that, right? So you don't have to just pick some specific class and the class has everything. Like no, you can pick your race and your class and your adherence and your devotion, and you can like mix and match. And it's not just pigeonholing you into this one thing where, oh, if you're a druid, you have to be this. It's like you can be a druid that is devoted to this and adherent to that and this race, right? And there's more customizability. The bottom line, TLDW, is a lot more customizability in my system versus 5e, where if you want customizability, you just have to pick a whole level and a whole other class. And it just comes with all this other baggage. And you may have only wanted one little part of it, but now you're a full-on bard. It's like, I just wanted this little idea of like, bardic inspiration and helping my friends. It's like, not you're a bard, you're musical, and you know about stories and myth and legend and, everything else that goes with being a bard, right? So, anyway, thanks for watching. If you really got this far, feed the algorithm, because we know YouTube needs more of this. And thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless. Goodbye.